Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast at American Muslim Community Foundation. It is so good to be back. It's been a while since we've recorded, but some exciting news. We have with us Sarah Alfaham, the Executive Director of AMCF. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this as well.
Likewise. So, you know, tell us everything that we need to know about you. Where did you grow up? What did you do for school? How did you get to this point? Give us the download on who Sara is.
For sure. Thank you. Um, so I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, kind of a typical suburban upbringing in the Midwest. We go to we go to the libraries, get involved in the art museum, and then on Fridays you go to the masjid. That's what you do. And then as I got a little older, Toledo's a border of Michigan, and so any youth programming within 45-minute range of being of Toledo, I would be at for sure. We're 45 minutes south of Detroit as well, so we um, we had the pleasure of being involved in the southeast Michigan, Northwest Ohio, Muslim community as well. So
So,
that
what
had.
you're saying
Mhm.
is that you liked Michigan better than Ohio.
I think Michigan has more to offer as far as
Oh, yeah.
as
We'll
far
just leave it there. You don't need to say anything more.
no as far
Michigan
as
is definitely better than Ohio.
um yes, in most areas we have good. They're called peanut butter Buckeyes, and they taste really
Mm.
good. So we still will eat the
Anything
Buckeyes.
Buckeye related, I just can't swallow that one, sorry,
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and I'm gonna take them and
I'm
bring
even
them to
wearing
Detroit.
yellow and blue, maize and blue right
There
now,
you go.
I
There you
just
go.
bleed Michigan through and
Gotta
through,
represent.
always. So typical Midwestern kind of upbringing, involved in the local Muslim community. What else would you say is like a definitive characteristic of Sara Al-Faham?
I mean, a characteristic would be I'm the oldest child, and I had to
Mhm,
take a lot of responsibility from a young age. I think that's a very true for any immigrant daughter, especially if
mhm.
you're the firstborn. So that was very real for me, and just being involved and outgoing as much as I could in order to help the people around me. I think that definitely was instilled in my values from a young age. And I also liked writing a lot. So that's what took me to undergrad, and I was a communication and history major
At?
at University of Toledo.
Okay.
Yes, and then from there I took about a year break after undergrad.
Mhm.
That's when I realized that I didn't want to just be telling the story. Um, I was a I was a reporter and dabbled a little in photojournalism as well. And I didn't just want to tell the story. I wanted to be a part of the story, and that's something that came out really strongly after undergraduate, after my undergraduate degree. And that's when I decided I want to go towards social work and in the macro social work world. And then I applied to the University of Michigan's School of Social Work and got accepted, alhamdulillah, and um, got my master's in social work then. So that has been a journey for me. And
Mhm.
I don't know, like, I want to say it's like not a typical journey because it's not something I knew that I wanted to follow right away, but it's something that I became like super passionate about and realized later, like, this can be a career. So it was very exciting to find that path.
Yeah, and very fortunate for that to kind of cross paths. Of course, we knew of each other back in the MINA
Yes.
and Muslim
MYC.
community phases,
Yes.
as you mentioned, coming up to Michigan for different programming, and also knew of your sister
Mhm.
and family. So it's kind of cool to see all the different paths colliding. Um, tell us a little bit more about after undergrad and like where you've lived and some of the projects that you've been involved with. Like, after the reporting gig, what was your next kind of career step? And give us your verbal resume.
Yeah, for sure. So after undergrad, as I said, I took a year off and I was actually in New York and DC. And I low key did odd jobs. And I just was like, this is my time to figure myself out and figure out what I really want to do because not only remember like 2008, all the newspapers shut down. So um I was like, and again back to the whole concept of like it was hard for me to walk into different spaces and different worlds, learn so much about them and walk away and pretend like I didn't, I couldn't contribute besides telling a story, which is important. And I think the people that find their path in telling a story is so important. But I just knew I wanted to put like my hands into it and be like, how else can I support, how else can I um make change in the world. Um so it really um just that year was very helpful in finding that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I look back on my life in terms of like what are those critical characteristics or moments that have defined and shaped who I am, a lot of it revolves around community, whether
Yeah.
it was community service or just an activity or a project that was done with other people. Um, and I think that's what I love about AMCF is like the programming that we offer has been different, unique, engaging, and it's not necessarily about the number of people that it's more so about the quality, right?
Mhm.
And I think that we can set a standard for people to come and attend and have a refreshing experience and hear different perspectives around these charitable giving concepts. Whereas mostly they're just asked to give and
Yes.
not really intellectually participate. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think it makes such a difference when you're a stakeholder in the organization's mission and wanting to see it succeed. Absolutely. It makes a big difference. And I'm really excited about this position because AMCF has the opportunity to do that. And again, I'm more leaning towards a macro perspective where I'm looking at things, what is the bigger picture and how do you change systems? And this is part of it, is that we change the way we do philanthropy from the get-go. Like it doesn't have to be the typical philanthropy, it doesn't have to be the typical white supremacist concept of what giving looks like.
Definitely, and I think we can continue to push the envelope on that. Um, so when you were in New York and DC, I know that you were involved with a really unique giving circle and very ahead of your time.
Yes,
So tell
absolutely.
us more about what year that was and the concept around the giving circle.
That was 2010, and it was a concept. It was called M100, and they put together um, basically every day you give out $1,000 to an organization. It's a small amount, but it was also around 1,000. It was during Ramadan, and it was for 30 days. So every single day there was a hadith attached to that funding, and who we like looking at the intentionality around who you're giving to, how you're giving to that person, um, making sure vetting around their status, their 501(c)(3) status. It was still very close to the time after 9/11. People were scared to give in general. You have young professionals, especially in the DC metro area. It's very transient. People who are coming in have, I guess, high level jobs in different areas, from government to marketing to nonprofits, and they're not excited to give to any Muslim organization. They're ready to really, what does it look like to be vetting an organization? What does it look like to intentionally give and making sure the money goes where it needs to go? So that was like the context of the world that we were in, and we were, um, and I was there was there's some amazing people that were behind the entire project. I was more of the coordinator, and I coordinated everything around like helping getting funds to vetting the organizations to giving them the funds. So that was super exciting. I think it taught me so much, and that was one of those pivotal moments as I was moving forward.
Yeah,
Uh,
and this just goes to say, like, AMCF is not a new concept. It's something that has been around. Giving circles have been around for generations, right? In each
Absolutely,
culture, every grandma and auntie and like everybody has their form of giving circles.
absolutely,
But we hopefully are bringing it more into the mainstream for the Muslim community, and engaging mainstream philanthropy and institutional philanthropy to see that Muslims are here.
yes.
And there's a new study by Indiana University that just came out in October of 2021 on Muslim American giving. And it guesstimates that Muslims donated more than 4.3 million, 4.3 billion dollars, which is crazy. As 1.1% of the population in the US, roughly, we're punching above our weight and giving about 1.4% of philanthropy. And to me, that's really exciting because that puts to our work into a thesis of what we're doing, how we're being effective, how we're giving together. And since 2017, AMCF has given out more than $5 million. So we're a small portion of that, in terms of Muslim philanthropy, but I hope that we can become a larger piece of that pie.
Absolutely. I think that any Muslim growing up in a suburban masjid walks in during a Ramadan Friday night, Thursday night, they're raising well over $100,000, so it's not like this. Any Muslim reading that those stats knows that, like, okay, that's very possible for that to happen. The Muslim community is fairly wealthy in the US, and I I think what AMCF does is brings that strategy of not just giving, which is amazing because the Muslim community is very generous. But it's not just giving, it's not just being generous, it's being strategic about your giving and strategic about your generosity. So I think that's so important, and just takes everything to the next level. And I'm excited about that.
100%. And, you know, after the M100 experience, how did that influence your trajectory in engaging with nonprofits?
Yeah, that's so interesting because, like I mentioned before, I was involved in the masjid very deeply. I was involved in youth programming all across Southeast Michigan, and I even got involved on a national level with MINA, Muslim Youth of North America, also MSA National, and just dabbled in a lot of those and helped out where I could in different areas. I think the piece is that I started to learn what does it look like to learn best practices and know where to break those rules. So it's not just about learning about those best practices and implementing them. It's about learning how to break those rules because a lot of times people have amazing intentions around helping and supporting others, and then they don't have those best practices, or they don't have a methodology, and everybody's reinventing the wheel all the time. So coming back to M100, um, you have an organization or a group of guys really that put together this amazing concept and implemented it, and at the same time was able to strategically take whatever best practices there was and implement it in a very um, intentional way. And so my mind shifted completely. It's not just about doing work, it's about how do you implement that work in different ways. And again, it's not about always following the rules either. It's about how to make those best practices work for us truly. So that definitely was a mind, like, just a different perspective. Was like, the Muslim community can do better. Let's do
Mhm.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then from there, after your master's, at the University of Michigan, Best university in the world. Where did you go from there?
I went back to Toledo and I kind of spent a year, also another year. Grad school is very difficult, let's just put it simply, and you needed some rest. So I spent a year kind of like also doing some part-time jobs just to like recollect my thoughts and find out which direction I want to go in. Because what I found, and I bet a lot of social workers have experienced this, is that you go into this utopia of what the world should look like in social work, and then you come out and you're like into the real world, and the real world just is horrible. So I just had to like let that sink in, and that the work that you want to implement is not accepted and not um, welcomed at all sometimes. So I had to go through that part, and then there was also a little bit of a mind shift as well, because back to the whole best practices thing and how do you break them. I know that I was in the macro world and I love the big picture, and at the same time, it's hard to understand the big picture if you don't know what's happening at the ground. So I did get my I went to work in Head Start as a social worker. I got my license, and so I was a licensed social worker, and I worked with vulnerable families within Head Start, and that is also like what like as a social worker I could help people is very different from a reality of what it looks like to truly uplift somebody versus giving them a band-aid. So just having that perspective was very, very interesting. And I'm
Yeah.
really, I worked there for 3 years. It was definitely an enlightening experience, and the parents became my friends.
Mhm.
Took a while for them to trust me for sure. We had to learn how to trust each other, and and in the end, it was like um, it was important for me to leave because I had to do some other things in life, and at the same time, um, I wish them all the best. Like there was concepts that, especially around achievement gap and things like that, that I think that a lot of the parents, um, having a social worker in school changes the way parents think about schooling and what does it look like to have a school that really supports them. So I was very blessed to have that experience for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then how would you say that's relevant to the concept of your most recent job before AMCF or at AMCF now?
So yeah, I after I got married and moved to Minnesota, and I was working at Propel Nonprofits as the fiscal sponsorship manager. And basically, what a fiscal sponsorship manager, I'm coordinating organizations that don't have their 501(c)(3) yet. They're very mission based work. They don't necessarily have their infrastructure down or anything. They're just really immersed in the work that they're doing and want to make it an official and institutionalized aspect. And so, what does it look like for me to be a coach, to be a mentor, to be someone who supports them in the work that they're doing, and not hold judgment and like, no, you should do it like this, or not give that type of advice, but really help them find what's the best uh, rule that they can break on their own. Yeah. So coming here, I'm bringing that mindset of like, we have best practices, and what does it look like to break them in different ways that work for us, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, really excited to kind of reframe things and see what rules can be broken. What can we redefine, repurpose? Don't need to keep doing things the same way just because that's the way it's been done. And I think that's some of the same mentality that I've had. And we are in the space of donor advised funds, of charitable giving, um, and some of it is antiquated from the 1900s. Some of it is very um, tax friendly and advantageous. And a lot of people criticize DAFs because it just allows the rich to put money away. But I can proudly say that AMCF has given a majority of his assets away. And we want to redefine how community foundations operate, how we utilize donor advised funds and get money out the door to charities. So I think that we've led that charge across the country, not only in Muslim philanthropy, but in mainstream philanthropy. And we've been part of conversations around this to shift the needle to make it more advantageous for nonprofit organizations. I spent my entire career as a nonprofit fundraiser. So, of course, I have this perspective. And that's why I also feel AMCF is a grassroots community foundation. And it's not common for there to be really national community foundations. It's more so local or regional. So we have a really interesting brand and story to tell. And I'm so excited to be looking into those things. And having you as our first executive director is part of that. And we're so excited to bring you on. And in terms of like what you did at Propel, if you want to share a little bit more about what you were in charge of, what you worked on, and how it's relevant to AMCF, that would be great.
You mean my past job, right? Yeah. So first, I agree with you about everything you just said. I think having an Islamic perspective on DAFs, having an Islamic perspective on giving, really changes the game. It's completely anti-capitalist in the way that it's set up and um, presented to the world and how it's implemented. So, as far as like my previous job, uh, what was really important in is making sure each organization got what they needed. And what I hope to do with AMCF is put organizations first and making sure they get what they need, but also to have an understanding of what direction they want to go in as well. Because we also don't want to step back into the world of making sure that um, or we don't want to step back into the world of having going back to the status quo of just running a nonprofit for the sake of running a nonprofit, running a giving circle for the sake of doing a giving circle. No, you want to have intentionality around it. And what does that look like? So that's what I hope my role will be, looking at those big picture things, looking at different partnerships that we can have across the country, looking at what does it look like to spread information and uplift organizations that really implement the best practices that work for them? So I'm really excited to do all of that.
Yeah, and that's an area where AMCF can grow. We are a small yet mighty nonprofit, I'd like to say, and we have a fantastic board who's done so much and has been an operational board. They've been part of the budget process, the strategic planning process. They roll up their sleeves and get dirty in the day to day work. And that's how we've been able to do so much with limited resources. But I'm really fortunate that we've been able to make some strategic hires with part time contractors, with you being a full time executive director with benefits, like something that I'm so proud of that we're able to do this right out the get go. Make sure that there is a savings plan and a health plan and all of these things that are critical. Because I know I've been at institutions, whether it was 11 years ago or even more recently, where I foregone the option to have healthcare or to have a 401k because I was committed to the mission of the organization and almost at my self detriment. I think a lot of Muslim nonprofit leaders find themselves in those situations. But I'm really happy and honored that we're able to provide relatively equitable pay, right? And good thing you agree.
Absolutely.
And these health benefits and the 401k benefits, because we need to take care of our talent and for staff retention and for all of these reasons that other nonprofits have challenges in. We want to make sure that those challenges are not at AMCF. So as we
Okay.
continue to grow and expand and build our team, like we want people to be excited that AMCF is a great place to work. And I will make sure that I do everything that I can to make that possible.
Inshallah. And I really have to add that one of the reasons that made me take on this position, because you're right, like a lot of times, a lot of Muslim organizations or a lot of new organizations in general will have these issues of like, okay, it's kind of a mess. Somebody doesn't, you don't get health insurance, you have to sacrifice this and this and this. But what really tipped me over the edge and got me excited about this position is the amazing team and the amazing board that AMCF has. Truly. Um, I was so impressed by the dedication and how the board discussed like keeping what does it look like to take care of the talent? What does it look like to implement new ideas? And what does that mean? How do you have that relationship to do that? I mean, that was all discussed in the interview process, which was so exciting to me. I mean, I haven't seen that in a while. So I mean, and this is even in regular nonprofits that have been around for a long time, that they don't have those discussions. They don't discuss the relationships and what does it mean to bring in your own flavor as a person to an organization. So I was just really excited about, and still am excited about being at AMCF, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. That's awesome to hear. And, through this transition, like I'm committed, obviously, 100% as a founder and um, being on as a contractor for as long as you need support and as long as the community needs, support from AMCF. But I hopefully, want to transition to be a volunteer on the board. And those are things that I'll take in stride over the next few months. And really set you up for success and allow the organization to continue to grow. And I think that's also somewhat of a growth moment for AMCF is leadership transition and empowering you and the new staff to come in and do the work. And understanding that I could only do so much, right? And I'm so happy with where AMCF is now, from being an idea on a paper and in my head to emails to probably thousands of conversations, to be honest. And it's just crazy to see that growth. And alhamdulillah, like I can't take any credit for it. It is the will of God and the hard work of everybody involved. It's a team effort and just happy to be on the team and really grateful for you to step in. I know any career shift is daunting, and you came in with such enthusiasm and already being like 4 weeks in, not even like you're killing it. You're hitting, firing off on all cylinders. We got this annual symposium and so many things to be excited about. Year end giving, and next Ramadan, so many things to be thinking about and continuing to move the needle. We have 137 donor advised funds across the country. I'd love us to see that double over the next few years. What's it going to take to get to $10 million distributed, now that we're already at five? Um, and all of these other milestones. So, really grateful for you to jump in and your past experience from Propel and working with fiscal sponsorships. We are going to be doing more on fiscal sponsorships, on endowments, on giving circles, and DAFs. So I think that there's a continued need, and so fortunate for having you lead it now.
No, absolutely, truly an honor, and I'm feel very, very blessed. I'm learning every day from the board, from the team, from yourself. So I'm very excited. Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
Cool. Any random things that you wanted to share that maybe we didn't cover? It could literally be any thought in your head.
I'm just hungry right now, but we're good.
Yeah, me too. No, I haven't had breakfast. I have been eating eggs from my chicken, Thelma and Louise, on
Oh,
the daily.
that's great.
So maybe go get some eggs and yeah. Any pets that you've had in the past?
That's like peak California, just so you know you have chickens in your backyard. But um,
Touche.
no, but my sister's cats, both each one has a cat. Well, one of them has two cats. One of them is Habibi, Naslibi, and then Molly. So those are my buddies.
Nice.
Yes,
Nice. Yeah, having the dog, having the cat, the 2 chickens has been pretty wild. It's a good time. It's interesting to see their, um, friend and being frenemies, really. Um, but they're just so curious and cuddly and yeah, they're a good time.
that's awesome.
Highly recommend.
Yes,
Awesome.
for sure.
Well, yeah, if there's nothing else, like obviously, like our commitment to excellence and philanthropy and being representative of Muslim charitable giving in the United States, that's what we're here for. If you're listening to this and you want more information on donor advised funds, supporting AMCF, seeing how you can get involved. Reach out to Sara, reach out to myself. Our website is amuslimcf.org, and you can find our emails on the team website.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Of course. Take care.
Sorry.
Long time.